Financial markets opened the year deep in the red after a sell-off in China on Monday sparked the same all over the world. The Dow ending the week down more than 1,000 points for the worst open in years, despite a blockbuster jobs report on Friday that capped the best 2 years of job gains in America since the boom days of the 1990s. So what's behind the bad news, good news first week? What does it mean for your money in the year ahead? Here to discuss that, two of the nation's top economists. Glenn Hubbard, Dean of Columbia University Business School, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under George W. Bush, and Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist with the City University of New York and the New York Times. And Paul, let me begin with you. You took on this question of whether China is going to cause a global crisis in your column. On Friday, we heard people like George Soros say this is as bad as 2008.
Well, China is really, really messed up. I mean, I'm definitely buying into the hard landing for China story now. It really looks like a bad mess. It looks like Japan when it had its big bust up, only worse and without the social cohesion. So China looks bad. The question is whether you can make that a story where the rest of the world gets dragged down. And the numbers make that a hard story to tell. You know, even now, even with all the globalization, the United States only sells about $1.07 of what we make to other countries, and most of that is to Canada, Europe, not to China. So it's a little bit hard to tell that story, but you know, like I said in the column, I don't have the courage of my complacency. Even though the numbers don't work, I'm worried.
So do markets overreact?
No, I am worried about China. I think Paul's right that our direct exposure to China and trade is small. Exports to China are only 2/3% of GDP. But that's a known known. The known unknown is the Chinese debt problem, which is very large. But the scariest is the unknown unknown. We all know that China has a lot of negative net present value investment. It's an economic long-term basket case. We always thought we could manage through it. I'm not sure that the short run and the long run are too different.
Which is why you don't have the courage of your complacency.
Yeah, now the Chinese debt, we have to bear in mind, is owed to themselves. It's not money, you know, it's an internal Chinese debt problem. There's not a whole lot of money at risk directly. But the trouble is, the world is complicated. We've seen enough crises come out of, you know, left field that we're worried. I still think, by and large, no, not a global recession.
How about the jobs issue? You know, we saw that strong jobs report, Glenn Hubbard, in 292,000 jobs in December. We've had the recovery seems to be on track, long and slow recovery, but remarkable job creation record for the last several years. How much longer can it go on?
Well, I think the jobs report was basically a very solid report, and we're seeing the duration of long-term unemployment come down. But I'm worried about a couple of things. First of all, we're not seeing as many people come back into the labor force who left as we would like. And I'm worried about long-term productivity growth. So I think that's what has markets rattled. We'll see pretty good jobs numbers. In fact, the unemployment rate will probably fall to 4.5% or lower in 2016. But it doesn't mean the labor market's healed.
I think the interesting thing is, you know, since the bottom in 2010, we've added 14 million private sector jobs. And we've done that despite Dodd-Frank, which was supposed to be a job killer, tax hike on the top 1%, which was supposed to be a job killer, Obamacare, which was supposed to be a job killer. Funny, none of these job killers have actually seemed to have killed jobs. Now, the U.S. economy looks fundamentally pretty good. I mean, household debt is down relative to income.
People just don't feel it. Is that because of the lack of wage growth?
So inequality is rising, productivity growth has been slow. So we're not seeing incomes go up that much, but we are seeing employment growth. And I don't see anything obviously wrong with this expansion. Inflation is not picking up. The flip side of that wage number is that there's no inflation problem. So I think we're looking only at some outside event, like China, possibly bringing an end to it.
Well, I think an inside event, too. The huge political uncertainty that you've talked about earlier on the show today in the United States, I think is very disruptive. And I think it has people in markets rattled.
Maybe Trump can just say to the whole country, you're fired.
So if you're at the Federal Reserve, if you're Janet Yellen looking at all this right now, are you going to pay more attention to the strong jobs numbers or the anxiety over China?
Oh, if I were Janet Yellen, I would be holding my fire. I wouldn't have done the rate hike they already did, because if something does go wrong, we don't have any room for maneuver. The Fed should be waiting until it really clearly sees the whites of inflation's eyes, because if they're wrong, if they hike too soon, there may be no coming back from that.
So that means holding off for how long?
Until you see inflation actually pick up, which we haven't seen at all yet.
I don't agree. I think the Fed did the right thing by hiking. I don't think they will hike again at this meeting, probably March or a little bit later. But I think there are real reasons to worry about misallocating credit. And we will see in a year's time inflation pick up. So I think the Fed's on the right path.
Well, they've been saying that about the inflation pickup for years and years.
I
think we have no idea, really. We don't know that full employment is anywhere close.
Okay, Paul Krugman, Glenn Hubbard, thank you both very much. That is all for us today. Thanks for sharing part of your Sunday with us. Tune in Tuesday night for President Obama's final State of the Union. I'm going to anchor our special coverage starting at 9 Eastern, and I'll see you tomorrow on GMA.